The rivalry between the Pandavas and the Kauravas had been simmering since childhood, but as they grew into men, it became clear that Duryodhana, the eldest Kaurava, saw the Pandavas as an existential threat. Yudhishthira, the eldest Pandava, was not only virtuous and capable, but also the rightful heir to the throne of Hastinapura. Dhritarashtra, the blind king, held the throne only as a caretaker until Yudhishthira came of age. However, as time passed, it became evident that Dhritarashtra was reluctant to relinquish power. He was deeply influenced by his son Duryodhana, whose jealousy had turned into an obsessive hatred. Duryodhana, filled with malice, knew that as long as the Pandavas lived, his own claim to the throne was in jeopardy. He had tried countless times to humiliate and weaken them, but his attempts had failed. The Pandavas were stronger, more skilled, and more loved by the people. Worse still, Bhishma, the grandsire, and Vidura, the wise counselor, always ensured that Duryodhana's plots never went too far. But now he was determined. The only way to secure the throne was to eliminate his rivals permanently. Duryodhana, along with his cunning uncle Shakuni, devised a devious plan. Instead of attacking the Pandavas directly, an act that would invite suspicion, he decided to stage an accident. He ordered the construction of a grand palace away from Hastinapura, in the distant town of Varanavata. This palace would be built entirely of lac, a highly flammable material that would burn rapidly once set ablaze. From the outside, it would appear as a luxurious gift, a token of honor. In reality, it was a death trap. Duryodhana approached his father, King Dhritarashtra, with false concern. He suggested that Yudhishthira and his brothers should spend some time away from the palace, experiencing the customs of their kingdom and winning the hearts of the people. It was an innocent enough suggestion on the surface, but its true purpose was clear: to remove the Pandavas from the protection of Hastinapura. Dhritarashtra, blinded by his love for Duryodhana, agreed without hesitation. He summoned the Pandavas and, under the pretense of rewarding them for their virtues, suggested that they visit Varanavata and reside in the grand palace built in their honor. Though Yudhishthira sensed something unusual, he knew he could not refuse the king's wishes. The Pandavas, accompanied by their mother Kunti, left Hastinapura for what they believed was a temporary stay. Not everyone was deceived by Duryodhana's act. Vidura, the wise and ever-watchful counselor, had long been wary of the growing hostility between the princes. He saw through the elaborate ruse and realized that the Pandavas were being sent to their deaths. But Vidura could not openly oppose the king's decree. Instead, he decided to warn Yudhishthira in the only way he could, through riddles. Before their departure, he took Yudhishthira aside and spoke in hushed tones. A weapon not made of metal can still kill. A wise man must have more than one exit in his house. There are those who dig with hands and those who dig with wisdom. The forest is safer than the palace. Yudhishthira listened carefully, understanding that Vidura was hinting at an assassination attempt. Though he did not know how or when, he knew he must remain vigilant. Upon arriving in Varanavata, the Pandavas were welcomed with great fanfare. The grand palace stood before them, shimmering under the sunlight. From the outside, it was magnificent, a residence fit for royalty. But inside, the walls, the floors, even the decorations were all made of lac and other flammable materials, coated with layers of oil and ghee to ensure that once a fire was set, it would spread instantly. The man in charge of the palace was Purijana, a loyal servant of Duryodhana. His task was simple: to wait for the right moment, lock the doors from the outside and set the palace ablaze, reducing the Pandavas and their mother to ashes. He ensured that no alternate exits were accessible and that all guards were loyal only to him. But the Pandavas were no fools. Yudhishthira, recalling Vidura's warning, began to investigate. Soon, Bhima, with his immense strength, uncovered a hidden tunnel beneath the palace, secretly built by Vidura's men. This tunnel would lead them deep into the forest. away from the burning trap that awaited them. The Pandavas kept this discovery to themselves, waiting for the right moment to act. The Pandavas had been preparing for their escape for weeks, waiting for the right moment. Purochana, unaware that his intended victims already knew of his plot, had been growing careless. He believed his plan was foolproof and never suspected that the Pandavas might turn the trap against him. One evening, as Purochana drank himself into a stupor and eventually fell into a deep sleep, Bhima seized the opportunity. With quiet determination and controlled fury, he set fire to the palace himself. He ensured that the flames would spread rapidly, engulfing the structure before Purochana could wake and escape. The fire roared to life, consuming everything in its path. The walls of Lak melted like wax, feeding the flames until they reached the skies. Purochana awoke too late. His own murderous scheme had become his undoing. Trapped inside the inferno, he perished in the very fire meant for the Pandavas. Meanwhile, beneath the palace, the Pandavas and Kunti crawled through the underground tunnel that Vidura had prepared for them. The heat above made their escape suffocating, but Bhima, with his immense strength, carried his mother on his shoulders, urging his brothers to move swiftly. By the time the palace had collapsed into a smouldering ruin, the Pandavas had emerged deep within the forest, far from the eyes of their enemies. Under the cover of darkness they disappeared into exile, alive but presumed dead. As the sun rose, the palace had been reduced to ashes. In Hastinapura, the news spread like wildfire. The Pandavas were dead. Dhritarashtra wept for his nephews, though some wondered if his grief was entirely sincere. The people of the kingdom were devastated, and even Bhishma and Dronacharya, their beloved elders, were inconsolable. Duryodhana and Shakuni, on the other hand, rejoiced in secret. Their greatest obstacle had been removed, or so they thought. But in the dense forests beyond Varanavata, the Pandavas were very much alive. They knew they could not return to Hastinapura, not yet. Their enemies had tried to kill them once. They would not hesitate to try again. And so, disguised as wandering ascetics, the Pandavas began their life in exile. Duryodhana believed he had won. The throne of Hastinapura seemed securely his, free from rivals. But what he did not realize was that his act of treachery had only strengthened the Pandavas' resolve. The fire meant to destroy them had instead forged them into survivors, preparing them for the long battle ahead. As the embers of the house of Lak cooled, a storm was brewing, one that would eventually consume the entire Kuru dynasty.